time, location, situation, place. You don't wear a hat on backwards meeting the Pope. You don't interviewing the president. And I believe you don't as a franchise quarterback in that weekly press conference, especially after a loss in which you were awful. Because I'm already questioning your judgment. You want to look like a frat boy? Go for it. Go for it. It's not me. It's not my football team.
Colin Cowherd's been in this sports journalism, sports radio industry for a long time.
Colin Cowherd is back through rain and fog and whatever. You made it back.
He an OG in the game, just like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. They really formed the big three of sports journalism, in my opinion. Welcome to Before the Accolades, brought to you by Versace Boy ENT, with your host, the Big Potato, Colin Murray Cowherd, born January 6, 1964, in Aberdeen, Washington.
Kurt Cobain was born in Aberdeen, Washington.
He would grow up in Grayland, Washington, a small fishing town about 2 hours outside of Seattle. Colin's parents were divorced very early in his childhood due to his father suffering from a drinking problem.
My dad was an alcoholic. I'm sensitive to it. Not overly sensitive. It's life. I'm fine. Not going to blame my drinking on my dad. I'm a grown-up. Mom doesn't pack my lunch. I do. So I'm not overly sensitive to it. Dad's an alcoholic. So be it. Parents were divorced. Big deal. Life. Deal with it. Roll with it.
Colin has an older sister, but he said he wasn't very close to her growing up and described his childhood as isolated. And in his isolated childhood, Colin would go up on the roof of his house and listen to baseball games on the radio and just stare up at the stars at night. I'm sure those were some great and very impactful memories for him, really starting to form the base of who he would become. Colin attended Ocasa High School in Westport, Washington, where he would play on the varsity basketball team for 3 years. He would get the chance to be the varsity starting quarterback his senior season, and he also did 2 years working on the school newspaper. After graduating from Ocasa High School in 1982, Colin would go on to attend Eastern Washington University, and there he all but took over the broadcasting department. There's some days Colin would be on the radio for 4 different events. In the morning, he might be calling the volleyball game, then in the afternoon, he go call the baseball game, then he come host the primetime late evening radio show, and then do the nighttime DJ for the radio station as well. Cowherd was putting that work in. I ain't gonna cap. And this was very important and pivotal for Colin's development because it allowed him to get as many reps as possible compared to going to a school such as Syracuse or another school known for its broadcasting department and competing with more people. So when Colin graduated from Eastern Washington in 1985, he already had way more reps than some of his peers with that plethora of experiences behind him. Colin would move to Las Vegas, Nevada for his first sports gig as a radio play-by-play host for the Las Vegas Stars, the AAA baseball affiliate of the San Diego Padres. Play-by-play, he said, wasn't for him. His voice wasn't built for it. Then he would find a new job working as a sports intern for a little bit before eventually taking over the sports broadcaster role at KVBC TV station in Las Vegas, Nevada. He had also become the director there.
Is playing host to a good high school tournament. This one's at El Dorado High School. Western in the red smoking an outman team from La Quinta. The long pass to Joe Weaver, one of the best guards in Las Vegas, for the layup. Then it's senior Chris Fossey, the beneficiary of a nice toss by Weaver, culminating in this basket. The scoreboard was not missing some key light bulbs. That was the actual score early on.
He would win Nevada Sports Broadcaster of the Year 5 times. After a while, people knew Colin Cowherd. In Las Vegas, he would be able to get into restaurants off of his name. That's when Colin Cowherd first got a taste of notoriety and fame. So I'm sure he was starting to like that and really liking that sports broadcaster role. And in Nevada, like I said, he was getting a little bit of notoriety and fame. So you gotta be good at your job to get that typically, or be controversial. And Colin was both. He had called out very famous, legendary UNLV basketball coach
Jerry Tarkanian.
And after all his tremendous success in Las Vegas, Colin had decided it was time for a change. So in 1993, he left Las Vegas, Nevada, and headed down south to Tampa Bay, Florida, and he worked at WTVT as a weekend sports anchor on their radio station. Tampa would be short-lived for Colin. He only stayed there about 2 years. He left in 1995. You know them West Coast people, man, they either love the South or they always find themselves leaving and not staying too long.
Wood's desk.
The fuck is that? Shit!
I'm dying in this fucking country-ass, fucked-up town.
He got a job in Portland, Oregon, and in Portland, he took his radio show, The Herd, with him there. That's where he found some more success, tapped back in with his West Coast audience. So now you got that Las Vegas notoriety mixed in with this Portland notoriety, and you got a little bit in the South with Tampa. Then in 2003, he would get a call from ESPN that they wanted to bring his radio show, The Herd, to their radio station and have him come replace the legend Tony Kornheiser because they were moving his show off of the radio. So in 2003, Colin headed up to the ESPN headquarters in Connecticut and started his time working for the network giant. And now at ESPN, Colin Cowherd had a big platform for him and what he had to say to really be heard.
I don't like Johnny Manziel. I think he's a spoiled, entitled, oil money brat.
Cowherd likes to walk that line and say controversial statements.
I do live television radio every day. I've made huge mistakes. I'll keep making them. I've had horrible segments. I've said irresponsible things. I've been an idiot. Then after a commercial break, I've got to go back on the air. Like a quarterback, I got to keep producing.
ESPN might not have known that when they hired him, but they definitely found it out his time there. In 2005, Colin Cowherd would actually be named Sports Illustrated Sportscaster of the Year. That same year, in November of 2005, Colin Cowherd would have his first controversy while at ESPN. He would make some comments about Eddie Guerrero after his death. ESPN didn't reprimand Colin for these comments. April 5th, 2007, Colin would abuse his power he had gained from sports radio. He would have his sports audience go send a mass amount of traffic to a website called The Big Lead to get the website to crash on purpose. It caused The Big Lead to be down for over 96 hours. And what's actually very ironic is that The Big Lead was founded and ran by Jason McIntyre, who eventually would become Colin Cowherd's co-host on The Herd on Fox Sports way down the road. It's crazy how life just have you meet people. After a second controversial moment, Colin would take a break from stirring up all this commotion. He would become one of the founders of Sports Nation on ESPN2 in 2009. Him and Michelle Beadle were their first to ever host. Eventually, it would transition to being Colin and Carissa Thompson. He would stop doing Sports Nation in 2012, move on to doing other things at ESPN, primarily, his Herd radio show. And then in July 23rd, 2015,
Marlins put a general manager in their dugout. People freaked out. Whoa, it's baseball. You don't think a general manager can manage? Like it's impossible? The game is too complex? I've never bought into that baseball's just too complex. Really? A third of the sport is from the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic has not been known in my lifetime as having, world-class academic abilities. A lot of those kids come from rough backgrounds and have not had opportunities academically that other kids from other countries have. Baseball's like any sport. It's mostly instincts. A sports writer who covers baseball could go up to Tony La Russa and have a real baseball argument, and Tony would listen, and it would seem reasonable. There's not a single NFL writer in the country that could diagram a play for Bill Belichick.
The MLB's Players Association and some of the MLB's Dominican players rapidly spoke out and talked about how they were offended by Colin's comments and felt like they were just completely out of pocket. Literally the next day, July 24th, 2015, ESPN lets Colin Cowherd know that they're just going to go ahead and end his contract early, which was due to end July 31st, 2015 anyway. So they ended it about a week early. That's what some reports have said. Colin has come out and said different.
January, I was in Connecticut on a couch with my wife. And we poured a glass of Pinot, and we would do this from time to time. It's cold there and snowy. You get bored early in the afternoon. And we were sitting there, and we were talking about our lives. And she asked me a really good question. She said, things are different. You don't feel as inspired. You've lost some energy. And she's done this throughout our marriage. She asked me a really interesting question. She said, from this moment right now, as the snow was piling up on top of the snow that was piled up in Connecticut, I didn't see my lawn for 4 months. She said, from now until dead, are you living where you want to live? And are you doing what you want to do? No and no. And so that late afternoon, we got on the internet and booked flights to LA. We were going to change our lives. At that time, I wasn't inspired. And so I went to my former employer and I asked him 6 or 7 questions. And I was seeking yeses. I said, I want to have proprietary relationships with my advertisers. Can I have that? Can I own my podcast? Can I own parts of my radio show? Can I be on a better TV network at this company? And I asked a lot of questions, and they were frank. And to their credit, they were honest. It was mostly no's. And a maybe, and we'll think about LA. So I changed agents, and I told him, get me yeses.
In August of 2015, it was announced that Colin Cowherd has signed a 4-year deal to come on to Fox Sports Radio and also onto Fox Sports 1, the actual TV station. And on September 8, 2015, the first episode of The Herd aired on FS1 and Fox Sports Radio, and it's still going strong to this day at the time of this recording.
Always invite people. T.O. was on the show last week, and I went right after him. He was great. Richie Incognito came on the show. Well, I was mean to him. He was great. LeVar Ball came on the show last week.
Really?
I was tough on LeVar. We always invite people.
In 2018, Colin Cowherd founded the Volume network that him and iHeartRadio and Fox Sports have a partnership on. So now he's thinking about ownership and building his own sports network and empire too.
Do you have good news for me? You're smiling.
I have great news for you. We're in business together, bro. I've decided to bring Club Shay Shay over and partner with you.
That's all your boy, the Big Potato, got for you. Hit that like, subscribe button for me, please. Let me know who you would like to see on the next Before the Accolades.
Get your hands off my first